As a team, they must work together. But on the bike, they're all alone. They face danger and pain, for there's nothing between the rider and the track. Only a fierce determination carries them through. As the lap count nears 200, the tension builds for these young riders. But in the end, it all pays off for one team, the Little 500 champion. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the campus of Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. We're here at Armstrong Stadium as ESPN brings you coverage of the 42nd running of the Indiana University Little 500. My name is Doug Rafferty, and joining me on the broadcast today, my colleague Chris Michaels. And Chris, fans a little slow to filter into the stands today. Weather has a little bit to do with that. A cool, windy day.
It's real cool out today. 48 degrees, not typical for April in Bloomington, and a north wind gusting around 26. Going to be a major factor in these riders, and see how they set up for this, and their strategies may change as we get out through the race. But we're looking for a fast, exciting Little 500 today, Doug.
It looks like the track has stayed in real good shape.
Track's in real good shape. They've done a great job of keeping it in line, and we shouldn't have any problems on that end.
Joining us on the broadcast today to help us cover all the excitement of this event on the infield is our colleague Nancy Rourke, and let's join Nancy now.
Doug and Chris, you really need to be right here on the infield to get a feel for the high drama, the emotion, and the excitement of this competition. I'll be bringing you all the action up close from inside the track, from the fans, and from the medical tent. That's right, injuries are a tradition here as well. These riders will reach speeds of over 25 miles per hour, and the turns can be treacherous. We'll keep an eye on it. Gentlemen, back to you.
The 1992 Little 500 is brought to you by Pepsi-Cola. Pepsi, everybody's got to have it. And by Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut is proud to be an official corporate sponsor of the Little 500. And we'll be back with the start of the 1992 Little 500 in just a moment. And welcome back to the campus of Indiana University as the 42nd running of the Indiana University Little 500 is about to get underway. The riders, all 33 of the starting riders, have mounted their Roadmaster bicycles. Chris, they're now taking the first parade lap around the track, and let's set the field for everybody.
All right, Doug.
First of all, row number one, Pi Kappa Alpha, fastest qualifier in this year's race.
Yes, sir.
Sigma Chi is team number 2, and Team Cinzano is team number 3. There's somebody to watch today.
We'll be watching Team Cinzano. They are by far the deepest team in this year's field.
In the second row, Alpha Epsilon Pi, Phi Kappa Psi, and Sigma Pi in the Phi size, team number 5. Another one we're going to keep a close eye on.
Phi size very deep in Little 500 tradition. They've won this race more than any other team.
In the third row, Delta Tau Delta, Delta Chi, and Evans Scholars. And in the fourth row, Lambda Chi Alpha, Acacia, last year's winner, and Phi Gamma Delta.
Acacia and Phi Gamma Delta are two very strong traditional teams. Of course, Acacia last year's winner, but interestingly enough, Doug, nobody on the team from last year's championship team riding this year.
So they've got their work cut out for them. In the fifth row, team number 13, the Cutters, 14 Phi Delta Theta, and 15 Pi Phi. And the Cutters, another team with a strong recent tradition in this race.
Cutters very strong. They have the second deepest team, we should say, in this year's field. They'll be strong.
Sixth row is McNutt Racing, Kappa Sigma, and Wright Dodds House.
Wright, traditionally, Wright Dodds House, the strongest dorm, non-Greek team in Little 5 history.
Sigma Alpha Epsilon, Theta Chi, and Team College Life round out row number 7. And Team College Life was awfully strong last year, Chris.
Yes, but nobody back from last year's team.
In the eighth row, Sigma Phi Epsilon, Pi Kappa Phi, and Alpha Sigma Phi. Row number 9 made up of Foster, Delta Upsilon, and Wilkie Reed. Delta Upsilon may be a dark horse in this race, even though they're in 26th position. In the 10th row, Phi Kappa Tau, Zeta Beta Tau, and IMO Major Taylor. And in the 11th row, rounding out the field, Tau Kappa Epsilon, Sigma Alpha Mu, and the Cyclones. So that's your field for this year's race. They move down the backstretch. As we call this race, you see on the back there, farthest from us right now, we're going to call that the backstretch, and we call it 4 turns, Chris. Let's also talk about what these riders have to do today. 200 laps.
200 laps. It's basically on a quarter-mile track, Doug, so it's a 50-mile race. The riders must make, the teams must make a minimum of what we're going to call exchanges, and we'll be showing you some of those exchanges. They are like a pit stop in auto racing, but the bike never stops. They just change riders.
At least that's the theory, that the bike
That's
never
right.
stops. And if it does stop, that's a sign that a team's got some trouble. All right, we're coming up on one more lap to go. This will be the pace lap as the riders come down the main straightaway and cross the start-finish line, and the pace for this race will quickly pick up. 4 riders to a team. No other race like this anywhere around. This is the granddaddy of races as such as this. Let's check, Chris, let's talk about our favorite teams. One's got to be Team Cinzano.
That's right. We'll be watching Team Cinzano. They're very strong, and we'll see how they set the field. They're going to be kind of up front. I look for them to bust out in front of or break out in front of the other teams and lead this pack around on lap 1.
Some of your other favorites to watch today, Acacia.
Well, we'll be looking at the Acacia team. They're very strong. They've got 4 strong riders. A couple of them have ridden before, but not last year. And the Cutters will be very tough as well.
All right. We move down the backstretch. The pace car has moved out in front. The pace of the race is now beginning to pick up a little bit. Chris, wind is going to be a strong factor for these riders as they're coming in. We see them right now in turn number 3.
That's right. In turn 3, the wind will be hitting them right in the face, Doug. So as they get a big lead or a big sprint down the backstretch, when they make that turn in the front of the pack, they're going to be slowing down. And here we go.
The pace car moves off the track. The teams head for the start-finish line, led by team number 1, Pi Kappa Alpha. And the start of the 1992 Indiana University Little 500 is underway, and Pi Kappa Alpha falls into the number 1 place as they head into turn number 1.
Pi Kappa Alpha brings the field going into turn 2. They're real smooth. Look at team number 11 on the outside. That's Acacia's Chris Snyder. He's going to overtake Pi Kappa Alpha and lead him down the backstretch.
They're wearing the traditional cycling yellow jersey. That's because they won this race last year, and Acacia leads them into turn number 3. Everybody smooth, the pack staying together as we complete lap number 1 of this year's race.
Everybody running a nice smooth course, a nice smooth line as they come down the start-finish line to complete lap 1.
Team Acacia leading them across the 11th place team in first place as we go into the first turn on the second lap of this year's race. Chris, almost 6 riders wide as they go through these turns.
Yes, but then all of a sudden they really kind of narrow just a little bit, and then when they get down the backstretch or in the main straightaway, they spread it out. Cinzano right up there along with Acacia, and now Cinzano breaking out as Cinzano moves into the first position. And what they'll do all day, Doug, is they'll draft, and we'll be getting into that because it will keep and combat the fatigue for this endurance race that we're here.
The toughest place to be in this race is in first place, and team number 1 is in first place as we cross the start-finish line in the green jersey, Pi Kappa Alpha. But that guy's got nobody in front of him. He's riding head first into the wind.
That's right. You'll see teams jockeying around the first 5 bikes because you don't really want to be leading the race right now. You want to just be in second, third, maybe fourth wheel, out of trouble, riding into right behind somebody in draft so that you can keep your wind so that when the time comes, you can be in a position with your team to go ahead and win the race. And you'll see teams go up and down all day at the back of the front and back of this pack.
And watching the pack as it comes around and out of turn number 4 and onto the main straightaway, we take a look, and one of the teams that's really moved up was in bad position and has moved right up is team number 6. They got themselves in a little trouble at the first of the race and got back. They're back up in front now and moving very well. That's Sigma Pi.
Teams coming around the backstretch now. The pack's starting to stretch out just a little bit. Some of the slower riders not being able to keep up with the pace of the front of the pack, and we'll see that. And this will definitely separate what I guess we'll call the men from the boys, Doug. As now when we go into the turns, they kind of bunch up again.
In the first few laps of this race, of course, the adrenaline is pumping. These are the fastest laps of the race until you get to the very end. Once again, the speed will pick up. And that's team number 13 leading them across the start-finish line. The Cutters, one of the teams we said to watch out for, and they're right up top. They've moved up from 13th place.
As we thought, the Cutters, Acacia, and teams that were in that middle group in rows 4 and 5, moving up to make sure that they stay out of trouble. You don't want to be caught in the middle of the pack in case of an accident.
Moving down as they're working on lap number 4 right now, and we'll complete it as they come by. In first place, Pi Kappa Alpha, your leader, team number 1, as the teams come around. And we'll be back with more of the Indiana University Little 500 in just a moment. And we are back on we're working lap 16 of this Indiana University Little 500, and the leaders right now in first place, the Acacia. Now they've just lost the lead, Chris, to team number 1, Pi Kappa Alpha.
That's right, Pi Kappa Alpha, Doug, then Acacia, then team number 3, that's Cinzano.
They're leading, but we had an accident here just a few moments ago. It was on lap 11, and one of the favorites in this race was involved in that accident. Let's take a look at it right now. And Chris, here they're coming out of turn number 4 onto the main straightaway, and tell us what happens.
Sorry, watch on your screen, see the lead bike there. Team number 31 is what he does. He cuts off team number 15, that Kai-Fi, and he takes out team number 13, the guy from the Cutters. And then watch this. Watch this right here as this guy just gets nailed. He gets kind of like T-boned as somebody can't get around him, and he just kind of looks, and he's just kind of laying there dazed, and somebody just kind of nails him, and he just hurting real bad, and hopefully we'll get a report on his condition.
He's being taken over to the track medical center right now, where they'll check him out and make sure that he's all right and treat whatever injuries there might be. But as we come by right now, 16 laps have been completed, and we still got kind of a confused pack really up there at the front of the race right now, Chris.
And Doug, we've got about a quarter of a lap interval as we're looking for the cutters. Team number 13, they've got some ground to make up, and we'll see now if the pack allows them to make up that ground. Now the pack can control that. If they keep their speed, and right now we're averaging 24 to 25 miles an hour, it is going to be awful hard for the cutters to do it by themselves. They're going to have to pick up or draft with another team, and maybe nobody will be willing to do that.
This, however, is not the only race that takes place over the course of this weekend. The Little 500 has been is being run right now, but the women's Little 500 race was run here at Armstrong Stadium yesterday evening. For more than 3 decades, the only Little 500 race available to women involved tricycles, but all that changed in 1988 with the advent of the women's Little 500 bicycle race, and Nancy Rourke covered that for us.
The women's race is run on Friday, the day before the men's race. Many of the same racing rules apply to the women. Their race is half the distance of the men's. Women riders are gaining speed in this competition, catching up to their male counterparts in time and expertise. They improve with each year's race.
3 and 4 and come down. They will complete 20 laps when they cross the start-finish line here now. And Acacia is the lead team, team number 11. They're followed by Pi Kappa Alpha and team number 12. Phi Gamma Delta, another one of the teams we want to keep our eye on today. So, Chris, most of our leaders still up front and maintaining good position in the race.
Yes, they all made it through that little mishap. Unfortunately, we're still waiting to see how the cutters are going to fare, but believe it or not, they seem to be making some ground up as the pack going into turn 4 right now, and the cutters somewhere along the backstretch.
Right, the pack, your leader, Acacia, coming through turn 4, and cutters coming into turn 3, so it's about a quarter of a lap lead that they've got to make up. That is not too much ground to be made up. They can do that.
Not at all. And like I said, the pack may slow enough to allow the cutters to make up ground. Now, the only problem with that is this will really test the stamina of the cutters. They're going to have to use a little bit more wind and a little more energy, physical energy, to catch back up to that pack. And maybe that'll be a factor for them near the end of the race. We'll just have to wait and see.
Another factor in this race is keeping the bicycles in physically good shape, and the mechanics have a lot of work to do on the infield. Nancy Rourke is on the infield and has more on that. Nancy?
Well, Doug and Chris, yeah, the race spills here are not only hard on the riders, they're hard on the bikes, and we've had a few spills. We're going to talk with Greg Spears, the head mechanic here at Little 5. Tell me what your job is.
I just basically check the bikes out before the race, make sure everything meets specifications. We stand out here during the race, and people like bend the rim or something like that. They bring it out here, and we replace the parts for them.
And these are their bikes you're working on. You also have spare bikes.
Right. The spare bikes are in case both of their bikes go down during the race. They can come out and get a spare bike.
Okay, thanks, Greg. A busy start already down here at the head mechanic area. Doug and Chris, back to you.
Very good, Nancy. Thank you much. And here we come down the main straightaway, completing 23 laps at this point, and Acacia in the lead, followed by Pi Kappa Alpha. Team number 1, the pole sitter, staying right up front.
That's right, Doug. They're hanging tough, and I'll tell you, they're surprising me. They haven't had a strong tradition. They train specifically for qualifications, and we'll see how they fare.
All right, so we work with Team Acacia, last year's winner, leading the pack through turns 3 and 4 on lap 25 of this race, and we'll be back with more coverage of the 1992 Indiana University Little 500 in just a moment. .64 laps completed now, and as you watch at the bottom of your screen, and a bicycle exchange taking place with team number 3, Team Cinzano.
Doug, Team Cinzano and Acacia just exchanging on those last laps, and now they're picking up, as you see on the back screen there, as coming around turn 1 going into 2, the Acacia rider in the yellow and the Cinzano rider in the red. They're at the back of the pack, and they will inch their way up to get back up to the front. So far, the the teams have been doing a great job of maintaining this pack, and the leaders that we thought of, the Cutters, Cinzano, and Acacia, staying right up there, along with team number 16, McNutt Racing.
One of the surprise teams in this race, Chris. Not a team known for its history of racing in this race, and most of the guys on the bike for these guys have never been here before.
They're all rookies.
A lot of guys out here asking, who are these guys? But they're staying right up front with the leaders. Team number 16, McNutt Racing, from one of the housing units here at Indiana University. The official standings after 65 laps shows the Cutters in the lead with an average speed of just a tick over 24 miles an hour. Team number 21, College Life, hanging in there at second place. Theta Chi is third. Team number 16, as we just mentioned, 4, McNutt in fourth place, and Acacia, team number 11, running in fifth place. That's official standings after 65 laps of this race logged in. We're now working on lap 66. It'll be 67 as we cross the start-finish line.
Doug, the pack seems to be spreading out a little bit more. The leaders now are taking a stand to where they're going to try and force the other racers to either catch up with them or just kind of fall by the wayside and control their own destiny, so that they will not allow any incidents like we've had where people get taken out. We had a earlier lap 50 accident that involved the pole team and basically has taken them out of contention.
You see team number 3 in the red jersey, Cinzano, moving up and taking the lead as what is now a very small pack comes out of turn number 3 and through turn number 4 and down the main straightaway. A few laps ago on lap 50, we had our second significant yellow light of the day, an accident over on the backstretch involving several teams, and it forced the yellow light for 6 laps in this race, Chris. That's slowing the average speed down quite a bit.
Average speed was about 25.2 miles an hour. Now we're down about a mile an hour, and that's a few turns on the old bicycle, down to about 24 miles an hour.
6 laps of slow racing will do that to you. A significant penalty leveled under that yellow light, too, for creeping under the yellow. A 15-second penalty leveled to Sigma Alpha Epsilon.
Now, team number 19 will have to spend 15 seconds in the penalty box, and what they did was they tried to improve their position under the yellow flag, and you cannot do that in this bicycle race.
There are your leaders as they cross the start-finish line, 11, 13, and 3. Acacia, Cinzano, and the Cutters. And those guys they've all ridden a smart race, have not been involved in wrecks. They're staying up at the front of the pack and out of trouble. Team number 16 staying up there with them in the red, white, and blue jersey. That is McNutt Racing, which may turn out to be one of the real stories of this race today.
Doug, team number 16 doing a great job, but I think if we look through as they pass around here, it's kind of hard to find them now. I think they've slowed just a little bit, so maybe they had that little burst, but we're getting into lap 70 here, and it's starting to fatigue starting to show a factor on some of these riders.
There they go, crossing the start-finish line with 70 laps now completed in this year's running of the Little 500. Chris, the track today, this is a cinder hard packed track, but it looks like it's staying in very good shape in spite of the wind and the cold that tends to dry it out.
Yeah, this stadium was designed specifically for 2 purposes: this bicycle race and Indiana University soccer. So the track is set up specifically for bike racing, not running. And it's got a little bit of banking in the turns just to allow the riders a little bit of extra speed when they're maneuvering. But it's a real hard-based cinder track, and they pour tons of water on it, and then they roll it and pack it real tight. So it drains real well, and they've got it set up. I was talking with some people before the start of the race, and they have some turns where it's a little soft. But right now, track looking great.
Holding up well. In the yellow lights as the result of the accidents today, there have been a couple of significant injuries. Let's go down to Nancy Rourke on the infield. She's got an update for us. Nancy?
We're down here at the medical tent with Dr. Kent Mosman. We've had a crash or two in the past few minutes. A lot of riders been brought in, about a half dozen or so. Can you tell us the extent of their injuries?
Most of them are perfectly okay. Most of the injuries are scrapes and abrasions from the cinder surface. One young man may have a separation of his AC joint, and that's a pretty common injury for these bike wrecks. He'll be fine, I think, and that's about the worst of the injuries.
What are some of the typical injuries? You said cinder scrapes. How are those treated?
Well, they get cleaned out partially here at the track, and they have a special sort of custom-made kit that they use to send home with them so that they can scrub them and clean them properly once they get home.
Pretty painful.
I think it would be. I've never had one.
Okay, thanks, Doctor. Doug and Chris?
Very good, Nancy. Thank you much, Chris. Those cinders are no fun.
Oh, no, not at all.
They really aren't.
Picking those out for years.
As we complete lap 72 now completed, and the leaders continue to be the top teams, the Cutters, Cinzano, and Acacia as they cross the start-finish line. We'll be back with more racing action from the 1992 Indiana University Little 500 in just a moment. Back to live action at the Indiana University Little 500, the 42nd running of this race, and as the teams cross the start-finish line, 102 laps complete, and Acacia is one of the top teams in the yellow jersey. They're our leaders right now, Chris.
Doug, we've got Acacia, the Cutters, and Phi Gamma Delta hovering around 1, 2, 3. They're trading it back and forth. Interesting, team number 3, Cinzano, now a lap behind the leaders in the same position of the pack, though.
They had a small accident on lap 87. They were only near one bike. That one bike went down, took them down, and it cost them time. And that has really been a factor for them in this race. So one of the favorites has already moved a lap down. But team number 11 in the yellow jersey, the defending champions, Acacia, crossing the start-finish line now. 103 laps complete, and this year's running the race. And Chris, it's a good thing we've got that many complete. The sky is turning a little gray right now, and the threat of rain hanging over this track.
Yeah, we do have a 40% chance for showers today, and we may be getting that 40% here soon. We'll just have to wait and see.
It's been a strung out pack for much of this race. It's starting to gather itself back together here as we pass through the midpoint, the halfway mark of this 200-lap, 50-mile race.
By the way, Doug, now that we've completed 100 laps, the race is official. So if it should rain and they cannot continue racing, whoever's in the first position at that time, they're going to win the race.
You want to stay up front at this point. Let's go down on the infield right now. Nancy Rourke has got somebody you're going to want to meet. Nancy?
That's right. Breaking Away is the movie that made the Little 500 popular worldwide. It was written about a man named Dave Blaze. He's here now. He's been coming to the race ever since. Tell me how that movie came to be.
Well, Steve Teschich, who wrote the screenplay, was on our team back 30 years ago in 1962, and he, I guess, got the inspiration from the experiences that we had together. And I rode about a little less than 3/4 of the race, and we won, and we just had a lot of great times together, and I was on my Italian kick at that time, and so he used it as a springboard to write his screenplay.
And you're still addicted to the race today?
Yes, I am. Still enjoy it. It's sort of like my rediscovery of myself.
Terrific. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And as we watch the leaders come through turn 3 and turn 4, and Chris, some various strategies being played out right now.
Oh my goodness! You can see where on the front of the screen here, the orange team, that's team 13, the Cutters ahead. Acacia is not on the screen right now, but they just come into it as we go into turn 1. They just made a bike exchange a few laps ago, and they're doing their job now to get back up to the pack. But as we see, team number 13, that's the Cutters leading the group down the backstretch, and right behind them, the pole team, Pi Kappa Alpha, down at least one lap. So the pack really stretched out, and you could be riding with somebody that's maybe a lap or two behind you, and you could be you could be left to their mercy if you're in the wrong position in that pack.
That's exactly right. Team number 13, the Cutters, your leader as we come by and complete 108 laps of this year's Little 500. You know, we've already shown you the women's race. This is the men's race today, but the Little 500 is much more than just a pair of bicycle races. A dozen or so different events that keep the Indiana University campus up and running for the entire month of April. Let's take a look.
Riders who compete in the Little 500 also compete as individuals and teams in a series of events spread out over the month preceding the big race itself. In some cases, riders race against the clock. Now in others, they race against each other. Qualifications for the men's and women's Little 500 bike races are held in late March. Bike team members race around the Bill Armstrong Stadium track, one bike exchanged between 4 riders, and the fastest team wins the pole position. Sometimes the quest for speed leads to bumps and bruises. One of the oldest Little 500 traditions is the Mini 500, men's and women's teams racing tricycles. There are non-cycling events, including a golf jamboree, a 5-kilometer walk, a 10-kilometer run, and the Big Red Relays. This year, there are 3 rock concerts, one of them the night before the race, then one of them right after the race. And this year, the whole thing is being capped with a nighttime concert featuring John Mellencamp, a native Hoosier born just a stone's throw from this southern Indiana college town.
from me and the guys in the band, nice to be here in our own small town this evening.
The two colors to watch right now, orange and yellow, Cutters and Acacia, Team 11 and Team 13, as they cross the start-finish line. 110 laps in this little 500 complete, Chris. These guys are picking up the pace at this point.
Right now, what's happening, if you see on the screen just ahead of the Acacia rider, is team number 3, Cinzano, and they are a lap behind. And the Cutters and the Acacias will not allow Cinzano to try and break away to get that lap back.
They don't want to let the breakaway happen.
That's right. They're taking him out of it.
All right. As we complete 111 laps of this Indiana University Little 500, we'll be back with more of the action right after this. Laps logged in this year's Indiana University Little 500, and the leader in this race right now by a significant amount is the Cutters. What are they doing?
Well, they've
got about almost a quarter lap lead on the rest of the field.
I kind of think they're trying to just kind of stretch things out, and what they're doing is they're forcing team number 11, Acacia, to play catch-up right now. Acacia just making an exchange right there as you see it on your screen, and now what they need to do is they've got to sprint up and try to catch the Cutter, who is now coming across the start-finish line, and the Acacia just moving in now and they're just going into turn 4. Now, how long can the Cutter rider hold up this distance and this speed? We'll just have to wait and see. My guess, with the way the weather is and the way the wind's blowing, he's not going to have that much of an advantage because he's out there pretty much by himself. He's breaking the wind for himself.
He's having to work real hard to maintain that pace up front. There's no doubt about that. And up until a couple of moments ago, it was really just a two-team race between Cutters and Acacia. Everybody else, these guys have really outdistanced the pack. They've done a terrific job of staying up front and riding a smart race and taking advantage of all the breaks that come along.
Yeah, they've been very lucky. Lady Luck on the side right now more the Cutters than the Acacias, but those two teams are the only two teams that are anywhere near within a shot of taking the checkered flag. I think everybody else, including the third place team, which is Phi Gamma Delta, down a lap.
Now the Cutters have moved up in position in this pack, so the Acacia has, I'm sorry, as you watch them on the screen, team number 11 in the yellow jersey, and they're your defending champions from last year. So they're moving up. They're trying to cut that distance down, but right now.
All right, let's look at the interval here.
Here's the measure. There you see the orange jersey.
The Cutter crosses the start-finish line there, and then we'll wait, and it'll be about 4, 5, 6, 7. About 8 seconds difference between the Cutters and the Acacias right now. Now, it was a lot longer a few laps ago, so it seems like the Acacia rider is reeling in the rider from the team number 13, the Cutters, simply because the Acacia rider has the advantage of the pack. Now, the Acacias just made a bike exchange along the backstretch. We didn't see that, to get a fresh rider to chase that guy down. And we'll see what happens. The Cutter just kind of taking it easy right now.
But in doing so, it also cost them more distance, and now they've got to work their way back up through that pack once again. And whenever you get into a situation where you're riding at the end of the pack, very, very dangerous, because if someone goes down, you've got no place to go.
And Doug, it's also a matter of the particular rider at the time. Now, the Cutters may have had a rider that's more of an endurance type rider, and he can just go out there and hang for about 20 or 30 laps, where the Acacias might have had a guy that was getting soft or a sprinter, and he doesn't have the endurance. So what's happening is there's a lot of strategy going on right now as you see the Acacia rider speeding up the backstretch to try and chase down that rider from Team 13, the Cutters.
So 134 laps completed in this year's Little 500, and these guys really working hard. We've still got a lot of racing action to go, and here come the Acacias on the outside. They're really pouring it on. This is the effort to try and catch them.
Yes, they're sprinting out now as they've gone ahead of that, what we're calling the major pack now. It's not the lead pack, because there is no lead pack. As the Acacia rider now, with his own wind, sprinting down the backstretch, the rider from the Cutters now going in to turn number 3, as the Acacias have hooked up with team number 3, Cinzano, to try and ride up. And Cinzano not even a factor in this race right now, Doug.
But again, the Cutters are your lead team, and they are about to cross the start-finish line in the orange jersey. And let's take a look. Here comes the interval, and you'll see the spread right here. Here's Acacia.
Still about 8 seconds. So the no gain, no pain, I guess. I don't know what you want to say, but right now the Cutters doing a great job of staying out in front. It's really kind of interesting at this particular juncture of the race why they would be doing that. I really would like to know.
Acacia's right in a position to catch them, though, should anything happen. You know, one of the most incredible aspects of this race and of this entire weekend and all the events that are tied into it is that these events are all run by Indiana University students, and you don't see anybody out here on a scholarship. These are all kids who are doing this because they want to be doing it. The event is run by IU students. The participants are all students. And it's the students, and this is the most important aspect of all, who benefit from it as well.
The theme of this year's Little 500 is cycling, scholarships, and tradition. The cycling and the tradition aspects are well known because this is a bike race that has been run every year since 1950. Perhaps somewhat less known is that all of the profits from this race and all other events which surround it are given back to Indiana students in the form of scholarships. Little 500 scholarships are very prestigious. To be eligible, applicants must be full-time students, they must work at least 10 hours a week at an outside job, and they must make very good grades in school. Since this race began 42 years ago, more than $600,000 worth of scholarships have been awarded to more than 4,000 IU students.
Acacia's just making an exchange, Doug, and now they'll see if they can reel in with a fresh rider and try to catch the rider from team number 13, the Cutters. This is definitely strategic. The teams are trying to wear each other out.
These teams are just, they're going after each other. They're not racing anybody else except themselves right now.
That's right now. It's the two teams are keying and focusing on each other. It's team number 13 against team number 11. That's all there is to it right now.
We'll continue to follow the action and be back with more as the 1992 Indiana University Little 500 continues in a moment. .170 laps complete as the Cutters cross the start-finish line in this year's Little 500, the 1992 running of this race. And Chris, these guys have really made a break, and that's the name of the game, breaking it away. They've got almost a half-lap lead. But back on lap 155, let's take a look and show folks what happened there. Spills all over the place in turn number one.
This is crucial, Doug, because watch that. We'll see it here in a bit. The team number 11, the Acacia team on the outside, they just barely sneak by this. Here's a little altercation. Now, these guys are getting tired, so they're dropping their heads, and this is what's happening. They're going to go down here, and then there's an outside accident there on the right. Now, watch, you'll see the yellow shirt go by here right about now. There's the Acacia rider. Look how close he came to disaster. It's put them a little bit behind now.
It really has. They're almost a half lap back on the leader. Now you're watching in the orange jersey at the front of the pack. There's the second place team. That's Acacia, team number 11. But in the orange jersey, team number 13, the Cutters, they're your leader.
And they're on the opposite sides of the track from each other. So basically the Cutter has about a 15-second lead. It's a 30 to 35 second, about 35 seconds around when you're kind of just in a cruising mode around this quarter-mile track here at Bill Armstrong Stadium. So right now the Cutter's enjoying about a 15-second or what is equivalent to about a half a lap lead.
With 172 laps now logged in, Chris, is there time for the Acacias to make up that distance? Can they close the gap?
Well, it'll be key on exchanges, okay? The Cutters and the Acacias have to make a few more exchanges. Now, if they're executed properly, then the distance could stay the same. The distance could shrink if the Cutters make an exchange that isn't very good and the Acacias have a rider that stays out a little longer and he can try and catch up. It's all strategy now, Doug, and endurance.
We keep an eye on things. We continue to watch as this race unfolds and the strategy continues to play itself out. We hope you'll continue to watch here on ESPN later tonight as well. The Ladies Pro Bowlers Tour, the Michigan Ladies Classic from Dearborn Heights, Michigan, coming up 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope you'll stay with us for that here on ESPN. 173 laps complete. Working lap 174 right now. The Cutters in the lead. Team number 11, Acacia, last year's winner, is your second place team. Chris, we've seen this race so many times come down to trophy dash sprint on the last lap, and that looks like what the Cutters are probably trying to avoid this year.
Well, in talking to some riders and people that have been around the track this month of April, the Acacia rider, Chris Snyder, who will be on the bike for them at the end, and the cutter rider, Dimitri Hubbard. And Hubbard, by the way, was on that last lap trophy dash last year and lost to Acacia's Pete Nover. Hubbard's been having some trouble with his knees, and they don't know if he's 100%. And Snyder has defeated Hubbard in a couple of sprints before. I think the cutters are trying to make sure that Hubbard will have enough of an advantage on Snyder to where Snyder won't be able to catch him on the white flag lap.
And it's not a factor yet, but we have noticed a couple of sprinkles of rain falling around the track. But let's hope anything serious in the way of precipitation holds off. We've got less than 30 laps to go. In fact, we're working lap 175 right now in this 1992 running of the Indiana University Little 500. Average speed for the race has picked up a little bit from where it was in the midpoint, 24.187 miles per hour. We're an hour and 49 minutes into this grueling 200-lap race.
Yeah, and earlier we were talking about team number 3, Cinzano, that we're going to be right up there with the Acacias and the Cutters and possibly Phi Gamma Delta. Cinzano and Phi Gamma Delta both a lap, at least a lap back. Cinzano running in 3rd place. They're not even going to be a factor in the finish.
Absolutely. It's been a race involving a lot of luck and for a couple of teams, and that's Cutters and Acacia. They've managed to avoid the spills and the accidents and the troubles that have befallen all of the other competitors here today, and they're leading the pack right now, and they've broken it away.
Okay, Cutters are right now leading everybody around kind of nicely. If you notice, they're keeping their head up. They're not dipping too much. They're playing a rail smart race now. Some of the riders are getting fatigued, and the slower riders are going to be asked to move aside to allow the contenders to have a free way of the track. And we'll see here as the Cutters come around. They should be exchanging here in the next lap or so, Doug.
I think they're going to get ready to do it. It may not be this time around, maybe next lap, but the Cutters are your leader there in the orange jersey, team number 13. You know, and it's not like the Cutters have never been in this position before. They've got 3 wins under their belt for a team.
That's right, and looking at the Cutters, they too also use what we call a bike exchange as well as rider exchanges. Now, if they do a bike exchange this time, it could slow them down enough to allow the Acacia rider, who is on the bike right now, to try and gain some ground on the Cutters.
But it's almost a 3/4 of a lap lead for the Cutters as they come around and down out of turn number 4 across the start-finish line. Here they come for their bike exchange.
And what they have to do is stop in their pit, just like they did, and tap the guy on the back of the seat or the wheel, and then he has to take off. So now that gives the Acacia rider an opportunity to possibly gain some ground. You see as the Acacia rider now moving into turn number 4, the Cutter currently going down the backstretch. So really no ground really lost by the Cutters.
Acacia really didn't have the opportunity to make much up there. The Cutters moving very well through turn 3 into turn number 4. You see right there, team number 11, the 2nd place team, and in the orange jersey, that's the 1st place team. The interval right now is almost 3/4 of a lap. Cutters are in a strong position to bring home the trophy in this year's race, Chris, and we'll be back and bring that to you as the Indiana University Little 500 continues from Bloomington, Indiana in just a moment. .92 laps logged in at this year's Little 500. We cruise toward the finish now, and cruising toward the finish is team number 13, the Cutters. Chris, what a job they've done. They've put a lap on the 2nd place team.
That's right, Doug. I've never seen this happen here. Nobody has ever said they said it couldn't be done in normal racing conditions, but because of the yellow flags and the strategy and the strength of the 4 solid riders for the Cutters, they have actually lapped the pack for against the 2nd place team, which is team number 11, Acacia. They're together right there on the track.
You see them together right there, but the team in the yellow jersey, Acacia, last year's winner, is a lap down, and it's just been a tremendous amount of strategy and a lot of grueling racing on the part of the Cutters to get themselves in that position where they've got to lap up as we head here toward the home stretch.
They've had some luck on their sides because of some accidents. They've had the advantage of trying to of spreading things out, and boy, it just perfect timing, perfect people on the bike, great strategy, and they really are in a position right now to where they're shining.
Snyder on the bike for the Acacias here on lap 193 at this point, according to the official timing and scoring statistics, and it's been a rough race for both of them.
I'll tell you what, it's been a grueling race, more I think for Acacia than the Cutters, because the Acacias have been playing chase up and catch up all afternoon because the Cutters set the precedent very early to try and take over control of this race, and they did so, and now they have a comfortable 1-lap lead against their closest competitor, which is team number 11, Acacia, and you see them together right there on the racetrack.
as we go down. 195 laps complete. They're working lap 196, and Cutters remaining very much in control. Acacia in second place. Want to remind you, there's plenty of exciting action here on ESPN all week long. Coming up on Sunday night. Don't forget Sunday night baseball, Minnesota versus Detroit. A couple of big sluggers in that game. Kirby Puckett and Cecil Fielder for the Tigers, and you're going to want to see that. Starts at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. That's Sunday night, May 24th, coming up later this week.
Doug, if strategy goes right from what we've been told prior to the start of the race, the Cutters will be making one more exchange. They plan to have Dimitri Hubbard on the bike for the finals, and I think according to our records and our statistics from the computer right now, James Kirkham is on the bike, and Acacia has already exchanged to Chris Snyder, who they had planned to have on the bike near the end. So this could be kind of key here.
If you've got a one-lap lead, though, do you even want to risk an exchange at this point? Why not just bring it home with the same rider?
Well, that's probably what they might do. I mean, they may just go ahead and change their strategy to just go ahead and let Kirkham finish the race, but you never know. Both teams, by the way, have won the race 3 times. The Cutters were tagged the team of the 80s because they posted 3 wins in the 80s, in 84, 86, and 88. Acacia has spread it out a little bit more. They won it in 61, 83, and 91. So Cutters gunning for win number 4 here in the 92 Little 500.
You see Acacia leading the Cutters through turns 3 and turn 4, but remember the team in the yellow jersey is a lap down, and they are the second place team in this year's race. Here come the Cutters moving outside, looking for an exchange, but not going to make one at this point, although that looks like it might be Dimitri Hubbard in their pit holding onto the bicycle, so we'll wait and see what happens on that. But right now, the Cutters in great shape to bring home the trophy for this year's Little 500.
I got a feeling we're just going to see this guy finish the race. I mean, why, like you said, take the chance of causing an accident as Chappie Blackwell preparing to give the white flag now to team number 13, the Cutters. And basically, believe it or not, opposed to past years, this could be just a little waltz around the track for a victory.
Here comes Acacia on the outside, followed by the Cutters. The Cutters in the orange jersey, they're your lead team. Here's the white flag. That signifies 1 lap to go for team number 13, the Cutters. They're your leader. They go into turn number 1.
Cutters breaking around turn 1. You've got team 11, Acacia, just kind of leading them around. But basically, they have kind of taken the excitement out of this race because the Cutters are a lap ahead. And Doug, they're smooth sailing down the backstretch.
Been watching races here at this track for ever since it opened, since 1981, and we have never seen a finish like this. We've never seen a team that wasn't in a trophy dash for the final lap. Here they come through turn number 3 and turn number 4. One of the most tremendous races that's ever been run at this track as far as a team race is concerned. The Cutters coming across the start-finish line. Chappie Blackwell gives them the checkered flag. And there's your champion for 1992, the Cutters, winning this year's Indiana University Little 500.
Posting their 4th victory, now starting a string in the 90s. They were the team of the 80s, as we said, 84, 86, 88, and now in 1992, the Cutters, with victory number 4 under their belt, the winners of this year's Little 500.
Still some racing going on. They're going to race for second place, obviously, and that's going to be Acacia at this point, leading the pack through turn 3 and turn number 4 in the yellow jerseys. They're coming down the main straightaway.
And Acacia will finish second. Third place will probably go to Cinzano, team number 3, as they are a lap behind the Acacias. They still have another lap to complete for them to get the checkered flag. They usually try to get the top 10 positions in before they end the race itself and throw the red flag.
As of lap 200, when the Cutters crossed the start-finish line and at an average speed of 24.286 miles per hour, Acacia, as we said, was second. Team Cinzano third. Delta Upsilon, team number 26, was holding down 4th place, and in 5th place, Pi Kappa Alpha, the pole sitter for this year's race. So those are your top 5 teams at the moment that the Cutters won the race, but that may not be the final standings because there's a little bit more racing left to go. They're just about to wrap it up.
Cinzano did cross the finish line, start-finish line in 3rd position, and then racing continues to vie for the rest of the top 10 spots. We have some teams that are a lap back, and we'll be racing here for a few more laps.
We'll have the final standings for you, and we'll talk to the winners of this year's race when we come back in just a moment. With an average speed of 24.286 miles per hour, the Cutters have won their 4th Indiana University Little 500. And Chris, they've had quite a history of winning Little 500s.
You know, Doug, they've only been involved in the race for 8 years, and they've won it 4 times out of the 8. So at a 500 clip, they're doing real well. And I'll tell you, here they come across the start-finish line. This is how it looked. The Cutters, hands up in the air, winning their 4th Little 500.
Your second place team in the yellow jersey a lap behind there at the finish. Let's go down. Nancy Rourke is on the infield with the winning team.
Here with the winners, the Cutters, their 4th win for the 1992 Little 500. Dimitri Hubbard, you were on the bike last. You had a lead going, 1-lap lead for about 30 laps. What was the key factor there getting you out ahead?
Getting us out ahead, well, we had to worry about 2 teams, which was Shinzano and Acacia at the beginning of the race. Shinzano had a little bad luck. They also got in a wreck, not the same wreck that we were in, but they also got in a wreck, and that kind of took care of them. Acacia was our main opponent out there towards the end, and we just kind of pursued it, which means, you know, getting everybody out on the bike and doing, you know, the max amount of laps they can do, going to 100%, and we ended up lapping everybody.
And you were asked before the race who was going to win, and you said Cutters.
That's right. That's what we say every year. Cutters.
Congratulations,
Thank you very much.
Cutters have to be proud of the job they did here today, winning this race by a full lap. Chris, it's amazing that they were able to do it.
First time they've opened Bill Armstrong Stadium in 1981, Doug. First time it's ever happened here at this location.
Acacia finishing in 2nd place. According to our computer standings, Delta Chi finishing 3rd, Delta Upsilon finishing 4th, and Phi Gamma Delta bringing it home in 5th place today. Chris, a final word. What a race.
It was a great race, marred by some accidents, and strategically for the Cutters, they happened at the perfect time, and they took advantage of it, and they ended up winning this one.
And so that wraps up this year's 1992 Indiana University Little 500. For Nancy Rourke and for Chris Michaels, I'm Doug Rafferty. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next year for the Indiana University Little 500. The 1992 Little 500 has been brought to you by Pepsi-Cola. Pepsi, everybody's gotta have it. And by Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut is proud to be an official corporate sponsor of the Little 500.